Hello and welcome back to the IVF Daddies podcast. Today I have two amazing friends of mine here, actually currently in Ibiza, which is lovely. We've got Naomi and Bolko. Hello and welcome.
Yeah.
Hola.
Thanks for having us.
You're welcome. You guys are fitness wellness gurus. Tell me a little bit about that and your amazing brand.
Wow, it's been going since 2015 in London. And then, it was more of a catalyst from when I was diagnosed with Crohn's back in 2011. And that was my kind of pivot to go more into the nutrition area. I was in the fashion industry before and modeling. And Bolko's always been in sports. He did a sports science degree
in New York, and then did 3 years in LA where I worked with celebrities. Moved to London in 2001, worked with Chelsea, then worked with independent football players, and then in 2015, I started Refill Concept.
Yeah, it was originally,
which was what the brand was called back then. And last year, we rebranded to Nabo Wellness.
And why Nabo?
Nabo is a amalgamation of the two names, which is Naomi and Bolko.
It just felt more, because when we started with Refuel Concept back in 2015, it was mainly food driven because of the Crohn's and my nutrition and us always struggling to find somewhere to eat together in London back then, because I always wanted something that was grain free, refined sugar free, gluten free, and Bolko just wanted protein. And I wanted the same. Yeah. Feed me. I wanted kind of the same, but there wasn't healthy comfort food, like just normal whole foods, chicken, sweet potato, broccoli. It was just, there was, the cafes that had, it was like the fast food. And back then it was more on the cupcakes, and it was the healthy scene wasn't on, it was on the cusp of starting. So there was like a raw food called Noma, I think, in Notting Hill, and there was one other. So yeah, we just found it really difficult. So I was like, okay, we need to start this brand.
Isn't it funny how something comes out of something so personal? I mean, IVF Daddies is out of our personal journey, Julio wanting to learn more, Nabo coming out because of your Crohn's, and then the wellness that you're in, and really just the passion that you put into it is fantastic. I think one of the reasons they're on the podcast today is obviously the Crohn's and the ulcerative colitis and all those different things, and then how that's kind of led into what we're going to talk about today. But tell me a little bit about what that is for people who don't know.
So Crohn's is an autoimmune disease, and it can affect the whole digestive tract, anywhere from the mouth down to the anus. So it's literally the whole digestive tract. So my first symptoms were in the mouth. So I was getting a lot of mouth ulcers, like I had about 17, and they would just one would go, but one would replace. And I would go to the doctors, they would do a blood test and say your bloods are fine. This was going on for 9 months. I ended up not being able to talk really, brush my teeth, speak to people, eat really, because my mouth was so sore. And the doctors again just kept saying my bloods are fine. I was like, my body's screaming at me saying there's something wrong. Then my symptoms started to progress where I used to get blood in my stool. So I knew then, okay, there's definitely something going on here. I told my friend, and she spoke to her boss, Catherine Hamnett, which is a famous fashion designer in London. We were working for her at the time. And she said, go see my doctor in South Ken. He's a private doctor. He'll take care of you. I mean, I'm living on my friend's sofa in London. I was like, how am I going to afford this? But I said, F it. I need to get sorted because I'm not getting dealt with. So I went to see a private doctor, and he examined me and he said, I think you've got Crohn's. I can book you in tomorrow for a gastroscopy and a colonoscopy, but it'll cost you 5,000, or you can go back to the NHS and wait there. So I went back to my NHS doctor and said, I need this to get me booked in. And in the time between the appointment, I think it was in about 4 months I had to wait, I spoke to my good friends, the Hamza sisters, and they advised me to go on the GAPS diet. So I drank bone broth, chicken bone broth, for a month. straight and put myself into remission. And then I was diagnosed after the colonoscopy and gastroscopy that it was Crohn's. Well, they said at the beginning, it could be ulcerative colitis or it could be Crohn's. But here's some medication anyway.
They're part of the same family, aren't they?
Yeah, but they are different.
Different.
Yeah. So I said, well, actually, I would prefer to know which one I have. Let's not just guess here. So yeah, then they found that it was Crohn's.
And that led you into healthy eating. And I guess bone broth for a month is almost cleansing your entire system, getting rid of everything and then slowly reintroducing, which is what they do. When you're doing that, did you feel better? Because you've pointed out, it's like, I know my body is, there's something's wrong. And this is what we see all the time with people with fertility. They're like, there's something isn't right. Did you feel that once you'd cleansed, you felt better? Or, I mean, how did that?
Yeah, I had no symptoms. So my mouth ulcer had gone like nothing. So I knew then that was the catalyst. I was like, wow. I was like, I just changed. I know it was difficult because there was no Daylesford then where you could go by your pocket of 24 hours. Bone broth, I had to go to the butcher, I had like 3 slow cookers on at the same time. My flat stank of bone broth. Yeah. I had to buy another chest freezer. I was like literally stocking up on this. And then I introduced like the avocado, the egg, and then slowly some protein.
But you also you also went against study nutrition.
Yeah. So that was then, but that was from like, wow, going from having those symptoms to then not being in remission by the time I got my colonoscopy and gastroscopy. So it was like, okay.
But they still put you on meds.
They wanted to be me on a mesazoline, I think it was called, and it was a maintenance drug. And after 6 months of taking that, I didn't feel any different. And I said to my doctor, why am I taking this? And they said, oh, well, actually, this is for Crohn's located in the large intestine, but yours is actually going, actually in the small, but yours is actually entering into the large intestine. And we just wanted to just see if it worked. I was like, I'm not a freaking guinea pig. No.
I remember us going to the doctor's appointment together. And I asked him, I said, look, what is how long does she have to be on this immune suppressants and these steroids for? And he told us for life. And we were like, can't be for life, I mean, what about food? And then as soon as we started raising that question, what about food? Why can't we not just follow a good diet? He was like, threw the book at us and said, these are all the symptoms that you would get.
Kind of scared us into,
like
you won't get pregnant.
A proper scaremonger tactic. So you either take this or you don't. And we were like, well, we're actually going to go and look at what food, because food is thy medicine. So we are going to address and see whether food can solve us. And he's like, well, I'll wash my hands off you then. So they wanted nothing to do with us because we didn't want to take these immune suppressants. I'm not saying it doesn't have a stage or a purpose within that. I mean, if someone flares up, yes, give them immune suppressants and give them steroids. But, you cannot tell someone to be on this forever. And as soon as we said, what about if we wanted to get pregnant? He said, well, if you want to get pregnant, we have to put in a plan for that. You have to tell me when you want to get pregnant so that we can start easing her off slowly, but you will always be able to have to take these medications.
That blows my mind.
Yeah.
It blows my mind.
Exactly.
Which neatly brings us into where we're at today, exactly. Right? So you did your fertility testing a year ago, right? And what happened there? Where were you in that?
You had your sperm test. First test came back that your sperm was glued together.
Yes, there was a fusion between, there was not enough movement in my sperm, lazy sperm, so to speak. And they told me to take a supplement for it that will basically loosen it up for about 3 months, and then come and retest. We looked at the supplement, we saw the ingredients in the supplement, and we said, okay, instead of taking the supplement, we will just take the ingredients without the bulking agents and things like that comes along with it. I followed this protocol for the 3 months, retested, everything came back perfect.
And do you remember what some of those ingredients were, just for our listeners?
Yes, one of them being CoQ10, the other one being maca,
vitamin C,
B,
D thing.
Yeah.
Zinc.
And zinc. Correct. Exactly.
I don't know if folic acid is good for guys as well. Is it just for the female?
Females only.
I think
There
it's
was-
female
there was-
when they're pregnant, because actually men produce sperm all the time. And so from, say, for example, you ejaculate today, whatever you ejaculated started 3 months
3
ago.
months ago.
And it synthesizes in that 3 months. So if you have a really bad sample 3 months ago and it's tested and they say, okay, it's not swimming properly, it doesn't look great, the volume isn't great, taking all of those supplements mean that actually you can improve the quality over that 3-month period of time.
Mhm.
And it's the same, for example, if you're smoking. If you stop smoking for 3 months, it'll improve. And so, and that's exactly what
That's
happened with
actually one of the things that they asked me, whether I was smoking. Am I a smoker? And I said no. And he said, if you were a smoker, we would have told you to stop smoking as well. If you wanted to get pregnant, that would have been one of the first things that they would have advised us to do.
So that just shows that biology is really unfair.
Yes.
So men, 3 months, you can kind of try and sort it out.
You all get the good deal out of this.
Maybe.
And then Naomi, where are you?
So I had the scan to check my egg count, and it was pretty good. It was about 11. And then I had a fallopian tube test, which I was actually really dreading because they said it was quite a painful procedure, even though I do think my pain threshold is quite high after some experiences with my Crohn's. So I went for that test and it finished. And I was like, I didn't feel a thing. So I thought for myself, I thought that was a good sign. And I came out of it quite positive, thinking that didn't hurt, so they must be fine. Because going from the emotion of not, because obviously women always think it's their fault. But then when it was a possibility of it being Balco, it almost was a relief for me. It was not in a nice way to say. I can put the blame on you. But yeah, I was just, okay, so it's not me. And it kind of felt okay. And then, but soon afterwards, when the doctor came out with the scan, she was like, oh, it's not good. And it's okay. She was like, it's in the middle. I was like, okay. She's like, I'll send the results over to your specialist and then you can have a call with her. So I had my bloods and we had the call with the specialist when we were here, actually, when we moved here. It was just about a week before his birthday, his 50th birthday. And I don't know whether it was just her character, but it just came across very cold, the results of saying, well, yeah, no, your fallopian tubes are quite closed and your hormone levels are too low, so you don't qualify for IVF. And it was just kind of a cut off kind of result. And then we were like, okay, well, what are the options now? And she said, well, you can have an operation on your fallopian tubes. I was like, what's that like? She said, well, our time's actually running up now. So if you do want to know about that, then you'll have to schedule a call with the doctor that does that kind of operation. And I was like, okay, right, bye. And then we ended the call like from me going, oh, maybe it's not me, to you being fine, and then it being me. I was like, oh, shit. And it was just this horrible dread of, we've left it too late. Why didn't we question this before? Just all of the, what ifs came through, because I really wanted to make my own decision and not have my body make the decision for me, which I think happens to a lot of people. And I just think conversations like this are crucial for people like us, because this generation of people are not living like our parents, where it's you get married, you get a job, and you just have kids, and it's kind of this normal societal kind of process. Now it's like we were nomads for 10 years, just hopping around. And obviously that kind of puts off any nesting feeling of wanting to bring kids into the world, because you're on the move all the time. And then you have medications with pregnant ladies on the box with a big red cross through it. That's like literally tattooed to my mind. So that's, for me, I wasn't allowing myself probably psychologically or emotionally to get pregnant because of this image, and also not having a nest or a home.
That emotional toll is something that people don't talk about.
Mm.
We want to do this, we think, we don't know, but we're traveling, we're working, we're building our careers, we're trying to become successful so that we can provide for our children. Whereas I think previously people just were like, okay, we get married, we have baby. Okay, that's just what we're doing, right? And I don't know if that's a societal shift that, you know, the paradigm has changed, or whether or not we're just talking about it.
Yeah.
Because I remember friends of my parents who didn't have kids. Now, was that because they didn't want to? Was that because they couldn't? Like,
but it wasn't ever discussed. You just didn't know. But what I think is also an important thing to mention is, because I was on the pill as well from 16, and all of my friends from the area that I grew up in, they all pretty much stayed there, got married and had kids. And it was literally the story of, oh, I came off the pill and a week later I was pregnant. And it was this, you just think that's what happens. You just go off the pill and you get pregnant. It's not like that. It's not as easy as that. It's not as black and white as that. And the only other thing I had in my life was in London, my friend had a miscarriage. And she didn't, I don't think, had the support that she needed, because she got really sick afterwards, anorexic, she got depressed. And I think that's another thing, is miscarriages aren't talked about, that it is a very high possibility that it can happen, and to be prepared for it, even though it's not a nice thing, but to know that there is a support system there for you if it happens, because it is normal in our daily lives now that it can happen. And it's not something that's wrong with you. It's just a percentage thing. It's a odd cell number, which can happen. It's like a lottery.
Yeah, it really is. And I think, to your point, that the taboos around fertility, the taboos around miscarriages, the taboos around termination, like it's I see it more and more and more. But the wonderful thing is people are talking about it now. And I think, again, I can only hope that what we're doing on podcasts like this is breaking that, so that people feel they have a place to talk about it. Right? We're now sitting here in Ibiza, and we've been talking a little bit about your fertility journey. What are you thinking now?
This is the thing. I think, and I'm saying I'm thinking because we haven't really thought about it much, or we didn't think about it.
Since we've been told by our fertility specialist that the option is kind of very slim. You know, she didn't say that we won't be able to fall pregnant, but she kind of made it seem that it's not likely to happen, you know. She said, obviously, she gave us two options. Option number 1, surgery. Option number 2, keep trying.
There was no option of freezing egg as well. This was like 2 years ago.
No, we've never heard about that.
So there was that wasn't even in our paradigm.
Okay,
a fertility specialist supposed to be.
This is what really just annoys me, that you're not given the options or the landscape of, here are your decisions. Like, this is what you can do. Because if you know, we were speaking earlier about back in the day, there was egg freezing, that you had seen it, you didn't really understand it. But we're now looking at the potential of making embryos and freezing embryos, so that in the future, if you wanted to go down that route, you could, because you can do that and avoid your fallopian tubes.
Which we never even knew. The only option in our mind
was IVF.
And she completely eliminated that because now Miss Fallopian tubes were too small.
And the hormone levels were too low. So that was...
So she said the possibility of IVF working is very slim.
Again,
so we wouldn't qualify for it.
But this is what, okay, so when did she explain what she meant you wouldn't qualify for it?
No.
Just said you don't qualify, end of story.
I think that...
Well, in all fairness, she did ask us to come in personally and speak to her about it. But because we weren't in the country at that time, we were limited to a 15-minute Zoom call.
I think asking the questions is really key, because if a doctor says to you, and you did this with your Crohn's, right? It's like, right, this is what is okay, goodbye. You're like, what does that mean? And I think I know that when I had my kidney stone last year and I was in the doctor, I was blinded by the white coat, the doctor, the pain. They're the expert. They know better than I do. They and just sitting there and listening and kind of trying to absorb it. And thankfully, Julio was next to me going, well, what about this? What about that? And I think that's really important.
Yes. No, I totally agree with that because I'm very much about that. I'm very much about the questions. You know, when I sat in Naomi's very first time that we were together, we were dating for about 6 months, and
He got the whole shebang.
we were in this
It's like,
doctor.
okay, he's a keeper.
We were in her sitting with her doctor, and I started questioning about what about this? What about the side effects? This and any other. Where he threw the book at me. I would have loved to have that questions available to me if I understood it more. You know, for me, the only option in my paradigm was IVF. You know, so what it was kind of for me like the Holy Grail. Whatever is wrong with us, it's fine. We have IVF as a backup. And then as soon as she said, you do not qualify for that, I had like no other questions. I had no armory. I was like, okay.
Oh, and he said afterwards, he said, well, that just means we just have more love to give one another. And he said the right thing, bless him.
But I think this is really important because actually, I think you've just hit the nail on the head. In the back of your mind, you're always thinking we can do IVF. And the reality is you can still do IVF. And I think, you know, one of the things that we've discussed is really kind of now looking at the fertility testing you've done. What does that mean for you and where can you now go? And again, having those questions to be able to go to another fertility specialist. And I think getting a second opinion is always key. It's always key because you're sitting here going, well, we're done now. We've got a puppy, can't do anything. But actually, you can.
And because even right now, if you ask us, we would say we don't know if we want a child or not. And it's okay to not know. Like when we said that 5 years ago, it's okay to not know. And I think that's important for everybody out there to know it's okay to not know if you want a kid or not, because it's a huge undertaking to know if you want something like that in your life.
But also that can change, right?
Yeah.
Because they're not knowing it now, or they're not thinking that you want a child today, can change within a few months, within a year. You know, life can change, and like we all know, nothing is set in stone. But having options where, for instance, our conversation early on,
just before the podcast, I was like, okay, options. And we need to go pretty quick sharp on it. Just to know we have that, because if 5 years down the line, we were like, okay, you know, we've even now I'm broody as hell with Ozzy.
She's pointing at the
puppy. Yeah. And I did actually the other morning. So the other night we went to bed and I was like, shushing him to sleep. And it was the closest I'm getting to feeling like what it would be like to be a mother, was getting up in the middle of the night 2-3 times, getting up, putting my dressing gown on, carrying him outside, putting him down. I know it's not the same as breastfeeding. I know like it's a whole different experience. But for me, that's the closest tangible thing I'm feeling as a mother. And we went to bed and I got quite emotional. Tears just started pouring down my eyes because I was like, is this it? Am I never going to actually ever experience having a child? I used to dream about growing something inside of me. Like my friends were like, I hate the pregnancy part. I was like, for me, that is the most magical part. We are blessed with females with this capability of producing another human inside of us. And I just found that concept mind-blowing. And I thought this one chance on earth, in this one lifetime, that I'm not going to experience that, kind of hit me in this moment of, you know, caring for one thing like a baby, but it's not our baby. It was a really weird, like, kind of another awakening to the question, do you think it's ever going to happen?
I think there's a lot of unpacking the trauma that doctor imposed upon you by saying you're done without giving you the options. And I think that's inability to explain what is out there for you happens to a lot of people. And I see it a lot where people are either promised one thing or their road is just cut off. And this conversation is really, really valuable. And thank you very, very much for opening up and talking about it, because there are many, many people who are sitting in the same shoes as you who don't know that actually there are options out there.
For me, I was never about, there's never blame in this situation. For me, that's how the cards has been dealt. This is how the universe is set it out to be. Let's move forward. But now knowing that there are options, I can take this into my own hands, right? It's no longer forecast that this is your path. We can actually determine the path, So thank you for that.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming on, guys.
Thank you.
And we will see you very soon. Thanks for listening.